this panel of the three Ps, people, profit, planet, I can't think of a better person to moderate this panel than Ken Hickson. Now, Ken Hickson, he's a leading sustainability advocate and author of 6 books. He's the chairman of the Singapore-based consultancy Sustainability Showcase Asia, SASA. He's also the director of Blue by Design. It's an international grouping of sustainability experts involved in the design and development of projects. And he's also the Singapore chairman of the International Green Purchasing Network.
Now, the theme is people, profit, and planet, or whichever order you want to put that in. Probably we should have profit at the end and people and planet coming first. Do any of you know who came up with this people, planet, and profit, the triple bottom line? Anyone know who invented this, initiated? Not me on this occasion. It was John Elkington. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard of John Elkington, a wonderful man, and he coined the phrase people, planet, and profit, and that became the triple bottom line for business. I decided that that wasn't good enough a few years ago, so I came up with a book called Race for Sustainability, and I decided there had to be 4 legs to make things more balanced. So I came up with energy, economy, environment, and ethics as the 4 key legs that can hold sustainability and everything together. I'm going to now ask or introduce Jacqui Hocking. Now, Jacqui I've met a few times before, and I'm sorry the other panelists I haven't met before or spent any time with. But Jacqui I know, and she and I meet each other regularly, usually at a hub in Singapore, and we talk about things that are happening and things we're involved with and like to get involved with. So Jacqui, you're going to tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and probably you might just promote the thing that's on your shirt as well, and mention that. But go for it, and then I'll ask you a riveting question that you'll find difficult to answer.
So I've got a very bizarre background. I'm basically a doer. I've been a documentary filmmaker from when I was a small kid, and me and my brother had our own production company making movies, and since then everything has gone exactly according to no plan whatsoever, and I've made my way into Singapore. And what I realized, I've traveled the world, and through that experience I want to ask everyone here today, actually a bit controversy, but not to quit your jobs, because I wholeheartedly believe that we're going to need change makers within companies if we're going to be able to change the world. And all of my energy in my life, using my skills as a documentary filmmaker, is all about helping people kind of execute on that vision and get it done. And a lot of people want a sustainable world and they're not sure how to make that happen. And through an accidental entrepreneur and just playing with projects and building ideas and creating communities throughout Southeast Asia, that's kind of what I'm focusing on. So yeah, this year we're holding the Singapore Eco Film Festival to bring together creatives, to bring together companies, to bring together communities and people like you to watch inspiring examples and celebrate the solutions that we have already, and hopefully I can connect those into multinationals so that we can scale them around the world and hopefully save the world.
Tjin Lee, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what Crib is all about and some of the other things you're involved with? Because I think from what I've been told, you've set up many businesses, you run many businesses, and I think you have some good things to say about maybe to inspire the rest of us to do a bit more.
Hi, my name is Jim, and I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I never started off thinking I would be one or even start a business, but it just so happened. But before I'm an entrepreneur, I'm actually a mom, but my children came along fairly late in life. One is 3 years old and one is 1 year old. The other babies are 9 businesses, and I founded them up along the last, I think, 15, 16 years of my life. So I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I started by working for a company, and then just decided to start the first one 16 years ago, and now I run among the businesses Singapore Fashion Week, Treehouse, which is a co-working space, Crib Society, which is I co-founded it with 4 other moms, and I think that's what I really want to talk about today. But also I think mainly because the topic is about eco and sustainability, in my role as chairman of Singapore Fashion Week, I realized that there's a lot we can do there that has really been untapped. The fashion industry in particular is one of the biggest culprits, I think, in pollution. Just sort of, just second to oil, I think fashion is the most damaging to the ecosystem in the entire world. Just the amount they consume, fast fashion, everything that they do. And it's only been recently that I've kind of looked at it, and it's actually through my work in Crib that I discovered that there was so much waste, unnecessary waste, and just in fashion, the way we launch new collections every season, we throw away styles that we wear every 6 months. And it's probably true that 90% of the people in the fashion industry don't even think about sustainability. So in my work at Crib, I came across new businesses, entrepreneurs, young people, and one of them happened to catch my eye. They have founded an eco-friendly company. They produce paper goods, and one of them fell in love with the idea of eco because she watched a documentary on polar bears, and it made her cry. So she came to me and she said, I'm really passionate about polar bears and I want to save, polar bears. And in saving polar bears, I started saving trees, I started producing bamboo paper, and then the rest of it. So I've decided to work with her. So Singapore Fashion Week this year, taking small baby steps towards, I think, just spreading that eco message. Actually, green is the new black almost appeared as the slogan on my tote bag for this year's Fashion Week. We usually produce about 9,000 paper bags that we give out on all the shows. So we've cut those 9,000 bags out, and my Crib member, who is in love with the polar bears, is actually producing from me instead 4,000 organic cotton totes that we hope are reusable, so that people will carry on reusing these organic cotton totes and not be throwing away paper bags. So baby steps, I think, and that's just sort of what I do in a nutshell. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a mom, I create businesses that I see that there's a need, there's a gap, and I start them up. And my mission, I suppose, has always been to empower women through entrepreneurship, but not just women, but I think that's just my starting point because I am a woman. But then next, I think what comes next will be, what can we do as the Singapore Fashion Week, connecting with the other Asian fashion weeks, what can we do to make that change?
Could I now ask you, please, Amanda, to say a little bit about what you're doing and what you're up to, and hopefully it'll also encourage people in the audience to think of a question they can ask you too.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name's Amanda. I'm a storyteller and writer, and as Graham pointed out earlier, I'm an enabler, a dream maker. So I guess I'm in the quit your job camp. I'm like, do what you want in life. I help people do that. So I guess I believe in the power of story. Like, everybody has a story, and we have a real sense of purpose. You can tell a story that can effectively change the world. And I'm like, how do you tell that story? That's kind of where I come from. I guess tell you a very quick story. So I guess I'm a typical millennial. I grew up like the same belief about getting a good job. With my parents of working class, I was the first in my family to go to university. So getting a good job was like a priority, like a matter of survival. So I was going to be a mathematician. That was my thing in university until I learned about the way the world works. Like, I remember I grew up in the States, so I had to take different classes there. And one of the classes I took was an ethics class. And in that class, I was a little bit traumatized because it was like sweat labor still exists, child labor and slavery. And I was like, I actually didn't know until that point that these things existed. And I don't know if I had a breakdown, I don't know what it was, but I was like, I can't do this. I can't study math and get a normal job and be a normal person. I got to change this. I got to do something. And so, I didn't know what that was going to be, but I decided to study anthropology, which is the study of people, and literature, so I could find out more about the world. Like, that was my only goal. I got to understand what's going on because I'm confused, and so I guess that's how it led into sort of writing and stories. Like, I started peeling back the layers about why people do the things they do, why as a culture poverty exists, and what can we do to change it. And so that led me into, believing that businesses can change the world if they put purpose first, and that the story is so, so important. So that's kind of a roundabout way of putting it. Yeah.
Great. That's great. Thanks very much, Amanda. Now, Graham, the only other male prepared to be up on the panel with all the predominant female, I think there are probably higher percentage of female attendants than there are males. I think I went to an event the other day. It was called the Women in Leadership Conference. And I presume some of you were there. If you weren't, you should have been there. And I looked around the room then, and I think there were about 5 males in a room with about 200 females. So I really felt outnumbered. But I don't mind. I was once described as a feminist myself. And at first I thought, Is that an insult? I'm not sure. This is going back a few years, but I was told it was a compliment because I did understand that women had as much right to be in the world, the business world, as anyone else did. And I've seen some dramatic changes over the years. I've worked as a journalist for many years in the media, and I've seen how now women certainly outnumber men in most media organizations, whether it be newspapers, television, radio, whatever. So we've seen some significant changes. But Graham, you and I are hanging in there. and you're in the business of sustainable sportswear. So this, you should also be talking Tjin, about what we can do with the Singapore Fashion Week and make sure more sustainable fashion goods and fashion wear is available for everyone.
Good afternoon, everybody. I was up here this morning, so I'll try not to rehash. I'll come up with something more interesting. My name's Graham Ross. My company, Kusaga Athletic, makes the world's future fabrics and sustainable sportswear. My background is not in textiles. In fact, I've only been in textiles almost 3 years. So I'm kind of part of what Caroline was saying, looking at yourself and looking at your experience and all those things and uncovering the gold below that. So my business is about communicating the opportunities, looking at things differently. So 2 years ago, I looked at my wardrobe and discovered I had a whole bunch of clothes that weren't great for the planet, and I thought, well, this isn't great. Why doesn't somebody make better clothing, better fabrics? So I went out and did that, and 2 years later, we've created what I'm calling the greenest fabric on the planet, and we've made the greenest T-shirt on the planet. When we formed Kusaga Athletic, we thought about it in 5 words: if not us, then who? And I think that's one of the things that comes to us as a company every day. So as you're trying to forge new partnerships, trying to reimagine an industry, when there's roadblocks, you've got to come back to something and say, if not us, then who? Because there isn't anybody else. But if you can be the guy going, or the lady being, if not us, then me, there's plenty of other people who want to follow you. So when we think about business, and we think about the impact that businesses have on the planet, across all businesses, not just the textile industry, there's a huge opportunity for us to reimagine that, for us as individuals to go, well, if not us, then who? And reimagine that industry and what it can be. And you only need one person. So I see lots of one persons in this room. And so you guys can be the people who can inspire the next generation of people who are going, I'm looking for my purpose. And there's plenty of people who will follow. So part of our journey is about being a pioneer in our industry, but hopefully creating a community of people who are really interested in following, but also taking over. Because I've got us this far, but I'm waiting for a bunch of people to come and take it further.
Thanks, Graham. That was great. And as I'm considerably more senior than you are, in years at least, if not experience, I'm waiting for a few people who will step up and help me out with what I do. So any volunteers, anyone, and I don't suggest you leave your current job because I can't afford to pay you at the moment, but certainly get on the bandwagon and both communicating and promoting good things that we should all be doing more of around the world. So I know there are quite a few in the room now, so keep up the good work and keep doing what we do best. And if we had Carolyn's slide up there before, so the difficulty sometimes in this space is filling in that bottom circle about getting paid for it. So that's a challenge, and particularly if you're committed and passionate, sometimes there isn't the money at the beginning. But I think increasingly we're seeing opportunities, particularly through crowdfunding and other ways that we can get money to support us with what we want to do. And I think Graham is a very good example of where sometimes the leadership, sometimes changing trends, making a difference can start with one person and often with a small company. And I think what we really need to do, whether you can do it within the companies you work for or from outside working in, is to get them to change the way a business is run, and particularly the whole consumerism thing, which Singapore is probably the capital of consumerism in the world, with a new shopping centre opening and another one closing often in the same week. And we're seeing far too many shops and far too much shopping for things that we don't really need, or we don't need so much of. So it's good to see what's happening here, and it's good to see the trends that we're able to observe too. So maybe Tjin, if you could tell us a little bit more about how, through the Singapore Fashion Week, you could both recognize companies that are doing the right thing, whether it's using sustainable materials or having a system where more recycling is going on. Can you give some examples of where companies are doing that and where designers perhaps are taking a lead as well?
It would be very new, I think, actually, because, like I said, fast fashion is probably the antithesis of eco-fashion. It's the direct opposite. Eco is about sort of, reusable. It's like, you create classics, you don't keep buying new things. And I think fast fashion is actually the exact opposite of it. And with social and digital media, it looks like fast fashion is winning that battle. I think the only way you're actually going to be able to make real change is to work with the influencers, the people that actually sort of create the mindset, the desire to be wearing eco, to be green. And if green becomes trendy and it becomes uncool to be, wearing only an outfit once and never recycling it, then you can actually, it starts with a mindset change, I think, more than anything else. Because yes, we can each take individual steps, and I actually applaud the young designers who have done so. For example, I'll give you an example. So the cuff on my wrist today, it's in one of the businesses I invested in, but interestingly, it's also because she works with a workshop in Cambodia, where actually it's like this bracelet is actually made up of recycled artillery. They dredge it up from the rivers in Cambodia. It was, and then they turn it, they melt it down, they make it into accessories. So rather than using new materials, they're actually using what I think what there isn't, what there's no use for, and they turn it into something new again. So her business is called ALT, Angie Lai Tay. She's a young designer, but it's not just her. I think there's more like her, and they want to do something, but many of them feel our efforts are so small. It's like, if I just leave my light on and turn my light off, does that actually make any difference at all? So I think it's just very hard for them all to feel like they are making a difference. As a collective voice, I suppose it makes it easier to be heard, but one by one, I think sometimes it's very exhausting, and there are much cheaper alternatives than using a workshop, in Cambodia to produce these much cheaper alternatives as well. But I see that the desire is there, the young designers. Another young Singapore designer I know, they have a shop called Mashup, and they actually took a look at all their collections and realized they had a warehouse full of clothes they weren't using anymore and they couldn't sell. It was from maybe 4 seasons ago. So what they did last year was they created an entire collection made up of their old collection. So they took their warehouse full of pieces of clothes that they couldn't sell, they cut them up, so they repurposed them, they made them into dresses, sleeves, they cut out the sleeves, they put them into, they basically made an entirely new collection out of things that were not wanted, that would have otherwise probably gone into a landfill somewhere. So the desire in the fashion industry is there, but at the same time, I think that it really does, the change needs to come from the consumer. And that's the fastest way to make impact. There are people with voices, like for example someone like Stella McCartney, and she's used that power to say, stop wearing real leather, real fur. So 1 billion animals a year die for the fashion trade. Feathers, fur, anything, it's pretty sad. So people with a voice should use that voice to talk. And I think with the fashion industry, it's the same thing. You have to make it trendy and you have to make it cool to be eco, and then you will start to see change.
And we all have a voice, remember, not just waiting for someone else to have that voice. Let's have that voice ourselves. Jacqui, and what you've been doing through your video work and other communications work, tell us a little bit about how you might have applied that to highlight issues, to draw attention to where things are being done right and where things are being done wrong.
Can I just have a quick show of hands? Who here has heard of the B Corporation? B Corp? Quite a few. So I think for me, the reason that I'm so passionate about that is an example of companies doing it right versus companies that are just using it for greenwashing and storytelling. For me, the biggest misconception is that you have to make a choice between profit or purpose. Then there's this new wave, which is quite a common theme, which is like, okay, let's make profitable purpose. But I want to switch it up and even go even further and find the stories of actually creating profit even more because it's purpose. So it's purpose creating profit. And that to me, I think, is like finding these certified companies that actually to their core in their shareholder agreement, they stand for something more than just money. And then using that as a profitable driving factor for the company. That's the kind of stories that I'm trying to find that I think is really inspiring, because that will actually change the world. Like it's really difficult to change consumer behavior when you think about that. So to me, I don't dabble so much in that. It's more about how do we just create value? It's shared value. Before it was, all about shareholders. Now it's about stakeholders. How do we create value for every stakeholder within the entire ecosystem? So it comes from them. Yeah.
And that's probably a good opportunity to talk about the shared economy, which is increasingly happening. And I think whether we see examples like Airbnb or Uber and Grab in the transportation area, but we're certainly starting to see it, I think, in other areas as well, where people are finding ways of not only sharing their talents, but sharing the goods, things that they don't need. And I think there's a stall downstairs that I heard about earlier called Swag,
yeah.
Swag, and they're encouraging people to bring their clothes that they don't want or need want to wear anymore, and trade them or swap them for something else. And I think we're going to see more and more of this happening. I've met a few people who are involved with shared economy businesses in Singapore, and I think we're seeing this happening here.
And that's way less scary for companies, because if you tell companies, oh, we're going to stop people consuming and buying, that's really scary. But if you just switch it and go into like a circular economy where it's just repurposing products, you still keep that ecosystem driving, but it's just in a more sustainable way.
Can you tell us how storytelling can help companies, if you like, get their act together, but also inspire people within companies to do things better?
Yeah, I mean, mostly I work with entrepreneurs. It's like you work at a corporate level, right? I deal with like the solo man, but I guess I can only talk about it from my experience of it, and I guess how I figured out about, or how I learned about the power of a story and why I think it's relevant to business. So I guess my take is that I'm not a business person. Honestly, I don't care about business. I only care about people. And so I happen to fall into business because I realize it has such a big impact on the world. And so when I was in school, I became really interested in learning about revolutions, because revolutions are mass change. Like what does it take to create a mass movement? Like I'm so interested in the psychology of that. It's not even funny. And so I started learning about Martin Luther King and his movement. And my first job out of university was actually working under Martin Luther King's attorney and Rosa Parks' attorney, developing civil rights exhibits and telling civil rights stories. And one thing I learned about that, the biggest takeaway I learned was that movement was a whole story. Like, how we function as human beings is a narrative. Like the reason why we're all here, the conversation going on our head, why we choose to buy stuff is a narrative. It's all a story. And stories shape the world. And I think that in order for a business to flourish, in order for a business to impact the world, you have to tell stories that shape culture, because stories shape culture no matter what. We choose to do things we do because of the stories that we buy into. So how do you tell a story that's going to change culture? That's like a really interesting question to me. And so I like to work with businesses and people who are doing incredible things and being able, and like, you know, not purpose washing, but you can tell through their actions that they're actually doing something incredible. And how do you tell those stories? And I think today, because of mass media and the internet, it's easier for these companies who are doing good to tell these stories and rally advocates for it.
I'm a great believer in storytelling. I've told a few stories myself, usually for good reasons, but sometimes you have to tell a story that maybe is to get you out of a difficult spot. But we're not talking about that sort of story. Greg, tell us a bit more then about how you got involved in your sustainable sportswear business. And are you seeing it taking hold? Are you seeing others maybe following your example? Because it always takes someone, as we've admitted, to get things going. Are you seeing others following a trend?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm probably rehashing earlier conversation, but I'll try and wrap it up pretty quickly. My entry point was I was doing marathons and triathlons, and every time I finished an event, I got a free T-shirt, which was great. It said, you know, you finished. Yay. The problem was, the more I did, the more free T-shirts I got, but I never wore them. Once I put them on, they would feel horrible on my skin. They wouldn't fit properly. One day I walked into my wardrobe, opened up, and it was piling up. And I'll admit, I didn't have any idea what my clothing was made out of. And so I looked at it, and it was polyester, spandex, nylon, cotton. And I went, well, what does that mean? So, as I said this morning, I went to the world's encyclopedia, Google, and I discovered how much impact cotton and polyester do have. So that's when I went, well, surely there must be other fabrics out there. There must be other people doing. We know about bamboo, we know about hemp. They're probably not great for sportswear and activewear, but you know, there's got to be something. There wasn't anything. except a bunch of fibres sitting in laboratories and the back of factories. And so I picked up the phone and I rang up and I said, "Hi, I'm Graham. I've heard you've got these fibres. Can I get them?" And I did that over and over and over. Eventually somebody asked me what I wanted it for, and I said sportswear, and they said, "Oh, we hadn't thought about that." And then I had all these fibres and went, "Okay, that's great, but what am I going to do with it?" So then I had to go and find a factory. So I rang a factory and said, "Hi, it's Graham. I've got these fibres you've never heard of. I'd like to make some fabric." And so we made the fabric. So that was great to understand whether anybody cared like I cared, because I was sitting in my room in my house going, "Yeah, we're going to save the planet." We went to Kickstarter. We went to crowdfunding. We went directly to the people out there. And so we made the greenest T-shirt on the planet because everyone owns a T-shirt. And so there is I think 500 people out there in the world who were the first backers of the greenest T-shirt on the planet. But what was really great about it, we had some challenges during the fulfillment. We actually had a lot of challenges. But when you go and try to make a brand new fabric, things happen. But one of the main things happened, we managed to make the fabric. We shipped it to our cut and sew place and they closed down. So that delayed it because I had to put it somewhere else. I didn't know what to say. But thankfully, somebody out in my community asked me, they said, "We haven't received our T-shirts. We just want to know what's going on." And so I went, okay. So I sat down one day and I listed all the things that went wrong. And I sent it out and went, okay, that's either going to be really great or really bad. I got this influx of people coming back to me. "We don't care about our T-shirts. We love what you're doing. We just want to support you. And we want to hear the stories of the successes, but we want to hear the badness. We want to be part of your journey." So that's when I knew that I'd cottoned onto something, and there was people. I'd found my tribe. And I went, wow, I found that. So there's 500 people out there in my tribe. So wonder if there's 501. And so, during this period, we're about to launch our range of sportswear and activewear. We're trialling 4 fabrics. I've got a bunch in development to go past what we're currently doing. But the lead up to now is I'm having these conversations with people. I'm saying, I'm a guy who looked in his wardrobe and said, we can do better. And 2 years later, with no knowledge of the textile industry, but a story and an enthusiasm that has infected all my suppliers, we've managed to get to this stage. So if I can do it, there's plenty of stories in this room that could do the same.
There are certainly quite a few examples around the world that we're aware of as well. And my wife and I visited a factory in Taipei, Taiwan, a couple of years ago, and they're turning PET bottles, the plastic bottles that I refuse to have up on the stage, without the water, into fashion garments, into materials that can be worn, blankets, clothes, T-shirts. We had some samples of the textiles that they produce from the fibres from the PET bottles. So there's a lot happening around. Artists are doing the same thing by turning waste products. We need to deal with waste a lot more than we have up till now. And Singapore is committed, believe it or not, to become a zero waste society. It's going to take a while to get there because we've got a long way to go, but certainly the trend is there and the commitment is there, so we need to do more. So thank you for your participation. Sorry we only had time for one question from the floor because I monopolised the show up here. Thank you to the panellists. Thank you, seeing this is the last session of the day. Thank you to the organisers of the Green and Black Festival.